The town was small, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, where secrets rarely survived for long. In the middle of this quiet community grew a friendship that many admired. From childhood, the two boys had been inseparable. They studied together, played in the same dusty streets, and even shared their lunches when one forgot his. Their bond became the kind that neighbors pointed to with a smile, saying this was what true loyalty looked like. As the years passed, the connection only deepened. They stood side by side through family struggles, school fights, and first heartbreaks. To those around them, they seemed like brothers, unshaken by the hardships of life. One of them dreamed of escaping the limitations of their hometown. He believed in hard work, planning carefully for the future he wanted. His eyes sparkled with hope, and his determination began to open doors that had long been closed. The other watched with admiration, but also with an unspoken heaviness in his heart. He did not admit it aloud, not even to himself, but each success his friend gained left him feeling smaller. Instead of pushing himself forward, he relied on the comfort of their friendship, clinging to it as proof that he still mattered. In public, their laughter filled rooms, and their loyalty appeared unbreakable. People whispered about how lucky they were to have each other, certain that such friendships lasted a lifetime. Yet beneath the surface, something darker was quietly taking root. The bond that everyone believed would never fracture was slowly becoming fragile. One saw the friendship as a foundation for his future, while the other began to feel overshadowed, as though the light of success belonged to only one side. It was a seed of tension no one else could see, but it had already begun to grow. What looked like unshakable brotherhood was slowly turning into a quiet struggle hidden from the world. As the ambitious friend stepped into adulthood, opportunities seemed to follow him. He found work that paid well, carried himself with confidence, and earned the admiration of teachers, employers, and neighbors alike. Each achievement added to his reputation, and soon he was viewed as a rising star in a place where most lives remained ordinary. For the one left behind, this success felt like a reminder of his own failures. He worked small jobs, barely enough to support himself, and each day seemed to stretch into the next without promise of change. The resentment did not arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, disguised as disappointment and frustration. When the ambitious friend spoke of his plans or victories, the other forced a smile, offering words of encouragement that sounded sincere. Yet inside, a storm was building. Every new accomplishment seemed to widen the distance between them. The jealousy grew sharper when the ambitious friend began attracting attention from people they both knew, including someone both had quietly admired. What once felt like a shared dream now seemed like a cruel competition, even if only one of them knew it. Outwardly, their bond remained intact. They still walked together through the town, still laughed at old jokes, still gave the impression that nothing had changed. But under the surface, bitterness was spreading like poison. Instead of feeling inspired by his friend's success, he began to view it as an insult, a deliberate reminder that he would never measure up. The rivalry was invisible to those around them, hidden beneath smiles and gestures of loyalty. Yet the friend, consumed by envy, was already imagining ways to tip the balance back in his favor. The evening was meant to be a celebration, a moment of joy after years of struggle. The ambitious friend had achieved something the entire town noticed, and he wanted to share his happiness with those closest to him. He opened his home to laughter, food, and the comfort of familiar faces. Friends gathered, offering congratulations, clapping him on the back, and speaking with admiration about how far he had come. The air was alive with cheer. Photographs were taken to capture the memory, and for a few hours it seemed as though nothing could spoil the night. But within that same room sat the one who carried jealousy like a shadow. He smiled. He laughed. He raised his glass in a toast. But beneath it all he was boiling with resentment. Each kind word spoken about his friend felt like a knife, cutting deep into the wound of his insecurities. He told himself he was still part of the celebration, still considered important, but the voices of admiration surrounding his friend made him feel invisible. The joy of others only reminded him of his own failures, his own empty future. When the night ended and the guests drifted away, silence settled over the house. The ambitious friend was tired but content, unaware that danger was sitting so close. What had looked like brotherly loyalty for years was about to reveal its true face. The mask of friendship slipped in those dark, quiet hours, replaced by a rage that had been building for far too long. In a moment of violence, trust was destroyed and life was cut short. What began as a night of triumph ended as a night of betrayal, leaving only shock and sorrow to greet the morning light. At first, the tragedy was explained away as an accident, a cool twist that stole a life too soon. The town grieved openly, speaking of how bright the future had been for the one now gone. Candles were lit, tears were shed, and the home of the grieving family was filled with mourners offering comfort. The friend who had stood closest appeared devastated, his face pale and voice heavy with sorrow. He stayed near the family, helping where he could, ensuring that no one doubted his loyalty in the wake of such loss. For a while, his act worked. No one dared to question the sincerity of a friendship that had lasted so many years. But investigators are trained to look beyond appearances, and small inconsistencies began to surface. Fingerprints appeared in places that did not make sense. Details in his account shifted each time he repeated them, and his explanation of the night felt rehearsed. Even more troubling was the absence of any signs of forced entry or theft. Valuable items remained untouched, suggesting that whoever had taken the life had not come from outside but from within the circle of trust. Neighbors started recalling moments that once seemed harmless but now carried a darker weight. The jealous remarks disguised as playful jokes, the quiet bitterness in his eyes when others praised his friend, and the way he always seemed desperate to compare himself. These fragments, once dismissed, came together like pieces of a puzzle. The mask of grief began to slip, and behind it was something far colder. What had been seen as devotion and mourning now looked more like performance, carefully staged to divert suspicion. Each clue added another crack, until the image of loyalty shattered completely. The courtroom was filled with a silence that seemed to press against every wall. Families, neighbors, and old friends gathered to hear the truth behind the crime that had shaken their community. When the trial began, the story of friendship and betrayal unfolded piece by piece, each detail more chilling than the last. The prosecutors laid out the evidence carefully. The fingerprints that betrayed his presence, the inconsistencies in his statements, and the undeniable pattern of envy that had poisoned the relationship. Every fact built toward a picture no one wanted to believe, that the man who had once been seen as a brother was in fact the one who destroyed a life. The accused sat with lowered eyes, the weight of exposure heavy on his shoulders. The mask he had worn for so long was gone, replaced by the cold truth of his actions. Witnesses spoke of the years of closeness, of shared memories, and of the strange shift in his behavior as jealousy took root. The jury listened, and the town held its breath. When the verdict finally came, it landed like a stone dropped into still water. Guilty. The sentence was life behind bars, a punishment that ensured he would never again walk freely among those he had deceived. The ambitious friend, whose future had seemed so bright, was gone, and the emptiness left behind could never be filled. Families wept, neighbors struggled to understand, and the community was left to reckon with a betrayal so cool it seemed almost unimaginable. In the end, the story became a warning that echoed beyond the town's borders. It reminded everyone that the greatest dangers do not always come from strangers lurking in the dark, but sometimes from the very people who sit closest, smiling while hiding the sharp edge of envy.